Hello and welcome to another Captain's Table. My name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the AstroPub, your space bar at the end of the universe. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. We got a good one for you. And this is the Captain's Tables, where I bring people from all over the Star Citizen universe to talk about Star Citizen news, theory crafting, lore, what have you. We do that here. Today we've got our topic is going to be about engineering and specifically fire, because that was shown off a couple weeks ago, and engineering in general. We'll get more into depth of the topics, but first we'll introduce the cast, starting with you, Axis0096. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Greetings, I am Axis0096. I am just your typical bottom of the bucket streamer. But I do a lot of cargo hauling. Well, I'm starting to get into it because of the new update, but I do salvage and exploring. That's my predominant traits. I do a bit of bunker hunting too, but I'm on. Do you want me to go with what I do next?
What are you doing next? Yeah, go for it. Where can they find you? Stuff like that. Yeah.
Where you can find me is on YouTube, Kick, Twitch, and Rumble now.
Rumble now too.
That's my newest platform. So I'm on 4 different places.
Awesome. And then next we've got fresh from the bottom of the Marianas Trench. I'm sorry, operational security.
Man, what are you doing? What are you doing?
He's actually from the orbit of Pluto. All right, so
I told you that in confidence. What the hell? You were in the circle of trust until just now.
Mr. Nightcob, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Oh, I haven't done much in Star Citizen recently. Obviously, thanks to Paul breaking the rule of silence on that.
Yes,
that's okay. Normally, I hang out and I stalk other Star Citizen content creators like you two. But occasionally, I do podcasts with the Tirakel and Tree 0311. Hopefully, we'll start that back up again now that I'm back. Mm-hmm. Talking about things like this. We've actually done our own show on fire engineering and strategies and how they relate to our experiences in the military and everything like that. So
nice.
Currently just getting back into Star Citizen and a host of other games that I had to put on hold for about 5 months. So, really looking forward to 324 and 40 here in the very near future. And then I'll probably start streaming it or something like that soon.
Nice.
I'm back for a little while longer.
That's nice. Yeah, good time to come back. Right around when all of the games are releasing. So
is it though, Paul? I feel like I could have waited like another month or two.
Yeah. Speaking of that, it's pretty famous for those of you who don't know. Pretty much in the U.S. Navy, and I think to the Marine Corps is to the same aspect. Every sailor is a fireman. So like every person in a Navy vessel knows how to deal with fire, is trained to deal with fire, and especially with you being a submariner, it's even worse. Probably the fire is even more dangerous there. So
number one fear.
So you have a lot of maybe not experience, hopefully, but you have a lot more professional experience in terms of like how fire functions, what thing burns and stuff like that. So what was your initial impression from CIG's presentation on fire at IS for the ISC?
One, I like it overall. The big thing that impressed me probably was how quickly it propagates in an enclosed space like that, which is fairly accurate. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's, certain things shouldn't be burning in the ship and stuff. But I think what they're really just trying to convey is the reality that it really only does take, in an enclosed compartment, it takes 2 minutes before, if you have not already commenced firefighting efforts, the space is going to be quickly overwhelmed. So we actually preach it a lot on board, the submarine and other ships, that it's like if you're not successful in the first 2 to 3 minutes of fighting the fire, odds are really good you've at least lost the space. Mm-hmm. Worst case scenario, though, is if you're not successful in the first 5 minutes, you're probably losing the ship. Which in certain ships, obviously, when you're hundreds of feet down, like that's untenable. And you know, similarly in space, like you can't afford to lose the ship when the environment outside is inherently hostile
Hmm.
to human life. So I like the danger aspect of that, and I like the idea that it should and quickly become one of those things that you can just look at and immediately know that you should be in fear. Like if I don't fix this, we're all dead.
Yeah.
And that's a truism that I think they did a good job representing. I know that there are some details and people are like, well, that's not how it'll function in zero G. And you know, that's just obviously metal and
Hmm.
it shouldn't burn as easily as the rest of the things. And there's some truth to that too that I don't I'll be honest with you, I just don't care. Because it's good gameplay
Yeah.
and it looks fun and it looks terrifying and it
Yeah.
looks like it spreads real quick and it looks like you should have to deal with it.
Yeah. Axis, same question for you. Initial impression on fire.
Uh, well, Nightcob's absolutely right. In an enclosed space, you're going to have a finite amount of oxygen as well. And if you're trying to fight the fire, especially if you're in a submarine, like his profession dictates, not only are you below waterline, you also have a finite amount of oxygen, not only for you, but the fire is consuming. So it's a time clock.
Hmm.
You're racing against time to either put it out or it takes you out. So not only can you succumb to the oxygen deprivation, but you can, and the burns, obviously, but which won't be in this version
No.
initially. But at some point, they did hint we will have thermobaric damage in the form of first, probably second, and third degree burns. Which who who in chat's ever had those kind of burns? They suck.
Hmm. If you had a really bad sunburn, I'm sure somebody has. I'm very pale, so I've had very bad sunburns, and so I kind of know the idea of how that can stink a lot. So
So I'm
uh,
sorry to get off on this tangent, but Nikon brings up a good point. But yeah, the zero G aspect may be a little need to be tuned a bit because there is no explosive decompression in space. When you open the door, it just vents and it
mm,
kills the fire, but it also vents your air source into the void of space. So you better hope you have a suit to contain your own oxygen in.
no, someone's saying third degree burn is nothing like nothing is sunburn. I said a really nasty second degree burn is really bad, is what I was saying. Uh, third degree burn, you can't feel anything, and you have to stay in a hospital for a very long time, or they give you skin transplants. So yeah, it's a little more different. What I was saying is, if you've had a really sunburn, you kind of have an idea of how that is.
Gonna have a point. Aluminum burns very easily, while also heat warps superstructure.
That's true.
So if a fire gets thermally hot enough, it can melt and corrode, I guess would be the correct term. It would corrode the integrity of your hull of your ship
Hmm.
or other things. And they showed it very well. They showed it burning into the panels and you can imagine the insulation just was going up like that.
Hmm.
Once it gets hot enough, it'll just spontaneously combust.
It depends on stuff. Yeah, I was gonna say like that's one thing. Like as somebody who studies a lot of history, I like a lot of space history, and like Apollo 1 is a tragedy for a reason. And for those of you who don't know a little bit of space history, the first Apollo, the first ship of the first attempt at Apollo 1, had veteran space astronauts, people who've gone to space before. And it was very different from what Apollo would become, but they were rushing to try to complete it. And I believe it was like 100% oxygen environment or close to 100% oxygen environment inside that capsule. And they were just doing a quick sort of like run through. They were doing a test and they were having some technical issues. And a errant electrical spark caused a fire inside the capsule and killed all of them. They were getting the hatch off very quickly, and by the time they got there to get the hatch off, it was too late. We're talking like minutes, and this was a spaceship. This is like a metal spaceship. This is the things that were burning were wires and the Velcro and the other like little parts of that stuff. Um, um,
With you.
Yeah.
I don't know if if you purposely dropped out or if it was just the sobering realization of what happened to those people or not.
Sort of.
Sorry.
It's okay, Paul. We're gonna let you go on taking the mood down a little bit.
Yeah,
it's all right, everybody. We're gonna climb back into jokes and good times in just a second here. All right.
My point was that is an example of like something that's like in real life of how that sort of things can happen. And they've had fires on like the Mir space station in the past. So like it is a real issue in modern day space travel, and it's a real concern. And I think the way that CIG showed it, of like, because I know there's people like, oh well, it's not realistic. It's like, well, they even said in the ISE, it's like it represents the things in between the bulkheads, the insulation, the wiring, those things burning and then catching fire and that kind of stuff. And that sort of kind of represents that sort of thing. And one of the things that struck me when I saw that was that CIG said at the very beginning that they want to make space dangerous. They want to make space dangerous. And this fire seems very, very much along those lines of they wanted to make space dangerous. And this feels like that step of like, yeah, you can, you have to repair your ship to make sure things are functioning, but you're also going to have to figure out, firefighting techniques and so those sorts of things. It's gonna start kind of building up all of those things. So I really enjoyed the presentation. It seemed fine. Dangerously elite. Access. I'm gonna ask you this question. I realize you're kind of things a little off kilter. There we go. All right. Was there anything you disliked about the presentation? Is there anything you were concerned about with Fire based off what they've said so far?
Kind of what you and I were discussing privately earlier, the RAM cost. Because it looks really hungry. As we all know, this game is really, really, I guess more CPU driven right now at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So when it switches to GPU, I wonder what the trade-off will be whenever this tech hits. That's what I'm concerned about. I mean, are we going to need like 100 gigs of RAM or something? I mean, I do, but no jokes aside, I am worried about just the sheer amount of power we're going to need. Will we need next-gen hardware just to run it?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. That cop. Any concerns or other issues when you saw the looking at the video?
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a valid concern for the performance cost. Hopefully the server meshing and all that kind of stuff alleviates part of that cost. But I don't know. My only concern, it's not a concern. I feel like everybody's going to figure this out. I feel like everybody's going to figure this out before too long, and that we're just all going to live in the expanse world. And I know I'm kind of stealing this potentially from a question, but like, why in the world would we even, once we're anywhere near a situation where a fire could start, like combat or whatever, why in the world would you be in anything but a spacesuit? We live in that already practically in the Star Citizen universe anyway, unless we're feeling like RPing, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, I just live in a spacesuit, and I would not just, turn off life support, vacuum in the ship, no atmosphere, no oxygen. Now I don't have to worry about fire. It's literally off the table. I took out one of the crucial elements of a fire. It's gone.
That's a good point.
So,
like the fire, this sort of thing does seem to be pushing that direction of like, why do I ever want to be out of my spacesuit if everything's dangerous? So
yeah. And now there's definitely no reason.
Yeah.
Once everybody figures that game out, where it's actually hazardous to be, in your ship with the possibility of a fire, not wearing a helmet, not wearing a suit already. Whereas, so for me, right, like on the sub, it would be untenable to just live 24/7 in full firefighting ensemble
Yeah.
with, a Scott SCBA pack on and just existing that way while I, day to day worked and lived. But when you're just playing the game
Yeah.
and it's just an avatar on a screen, you're like, "I don't care."
I don't care. I don't care if they're dying of heat exhaustion in there. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, the dudes. I mean, but real life, you would not want to sit in your, full suit of space armor with a helmet on for hours at a time while you're doing stuff, running through quantum and all that kind of stuff. You're literally living out of your ship. You would not live out of your ship in that armor. So it's kind of one of those things that you're just like, I want them to also have reasons for us to get out of the armor.
Mhm.
And right now, this only just reinforces that rule. That's a concern.
Okay.
That's all I got though.
Yeah. My only concern about it is I saw this mentioned, and I don't fully agree, but I do think it's something that CIG should keep in mind, which I'm sure they are. Is like how much of this is necessary? Because like you're already going to have engineering gameplay and managing the power and like the charge and drain of various parts of the ship and maintaining the ship. Like, does adding like propagatable fire really add a gameplay element to the game that's important for the game to be what it is? I do think that CIG will probably find the balance, so it's not like the fire is going to. It's not like you hit one person fires one gun at you and suddenly your ship is on fire and it consumes the ship in 2 minutes, sort of thing. Like I don't think they'll go full realism with it or go full ridiculous with it, but they're gonna definitely have to find that balance between somebody walking on your ship and firing an energy weapon like 4 times and suddenly fire everywhere, versus somebody versus like um, taking an act of Congress to be able to light your ship on fire. There needs to be a good kind of balance between those options. So, all right, let's move on to like kind of engineering in terms of relates to fire, because we kind of touched on that topic a little bit with like life support and stuff like that. They did show a little bit of the new engineering systems. I talked a little bit about how life support and stuff will work. What from that did you pull out there that kind of interests you from that video? I'll start with you, Nightcub, on this one.
Ooh. So right away, I tell you what still interests me is the batteries. I find it incredible that they've kind of switched the idea from redundancy to batteries. Because they mentioned this in a ISC a while ago, or maybe it was SEL. Maybe it might have been CitizenCon actually, where he talked about instead of you got like, all right, standard ship, maybe 2 power plants. Ideally, in my mind, what should be the rule is 1 power plant is enough to power your ship's, at the very least, vital loads. All your propulsion, quantum drive, flight control, maneuvering thrusters, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you might have to sacrifice weapons, shields, one of the two. But if you have 2 power supplies, you should be able to power all your loads, combat ready at all times. And then they went with this idea like, even with your 2 power supplies, you're going to have batteries that you have to assign power levels to one thing or the other. So it's never like you've got full efficiency, even with the prescribed power structure that your ship was designed with. And I was like, that's a weird way to go. Because I would have thought the redundancy was all about, hey, battle damage, because that's how most design philosophy works for a warship. It's like, okay, we give you X amount of power supply, and the idea is we build enough redundancy in that you can take some battle damage and still be in the fight. You take too much, you're in casualty mode. You're trying to get some of it back to get to full combat capability. If you lose it all, well, you're dead. So it's okay. Just understand that you're dead. But you might have a third emergency power supply or a fourth, maybe 2, where it's like, okay, this you can limp until you can get one of the primaries back online. one of the redundant primaries back online, and then you're maybe not in the fight, but you're, limping away, and you can take yourself out of the fight. Because I mean, really, realistically, let's just assume big ship battles. You get into a major fight. There's multiple targets on opposing sides. Somebody disables you, you're out. And they're not going to worry about firing at you anymore because they got other people still shooting at them. You should still worry about the people shooting at you over the people that are out of the fight. And, that might be your opportunity to, at the very least, get yourself fully out of the fight and you limp home. They still won the engagement, but,
Mhm.
you at least live to fight another day kind of thing. Anyway, this whole battery thing though is interesting to me. Is like you've constantly got to assign what your priorities are for power, and I'm worried about what the consequences of that are. Like, how good are the batteries? Do they make up for the loss of a redundant power supply? Because many ships have multiples,
Mhm.
and then there are some that are designed with one,
Yeah. I
and it's like, what's that deal?
I I can definitely see that. The one thing I'll kind of add on to that is I'd like to see differentiation, because like one of the things they said was like going into quantum drive, it takes up all of the power supply, which kind of makes sense. It's like we want to try to do minimum standard for like your commercial vessel. It's just like we're just trying to get you from point A to point B and make it cheap. So we want to try to cheap as possible kind of power supply. But then you'd want a differentiation between that and say like a Perseus, which is like, hey, this was built to be a military vessel. It has backups for backups. An exploration ship should obviously have more power than it needs because it's not going to be in a place where it's going to have regular servicing and maintenance. So it needs to be long voyages and have a lot of power backups and other sort of things like that. I can see that sort of differentiation, but if everything is just you can't use it if you want to use full bore everything, you need to have charged batteries, and you're going to start using your charged batteries. It's like, okay, why? The batteries should be there as oh, this is taken down, do this. Or you want to go
Yeah.
silent mode, you just turn off your engine, you turn off your power sources, you use the battery to kind of stealth your way in and out. So
Oh man, you mean like an old diesel boat?
yeah, like
Yeah, that would work.
and then those
That'd
like
be kind of cool.
those are levers they could pull for like gameplay aspects. Like having the batteries becomes more of a like a like a way that players can approach a problem rather than being this is how you have to solve this problem using this solution. It feels more sandboxy, more emergent, I should say. So
I'm with you.
Access. How about you? What are your thoughts initially on engineering? What they've talked about in the past, especially in the video and such.
Okay, I'm lost.
It's okay. Engineering. So what they talked about in engineering, like power management, atmosphere management, that kind of stuff. What are your initial thoughts on what CIG's talked about?
Initially, we just had the fuses and the conduit stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then they added the batteries. So, okay. Batteries are usually just storage inputs.
Mhm.
Somebody brought up fuel in the comments, and that's a good point. But what are you fueling? Generator or the engine itself?
I would assume the power plant.
I
The
think
power plant has to run on some kind of fuel. It's not just like one of those like
yeah.
Carnot engines of just, oh, I don't need a source and I'm a perpetual machine. I
Yeah.
would assume the power plant itself derives some amount of fuel from either. I would assume that's the hydrogen.
Yeah.
I would assume that's what runs on hydrogen, and your quantum drive burns an entirely different style of fuel.
Yeah.
That's what I would assume. So the high, and I'm looking forward to at all that, and this kind of comes back to the batteries thing, but is as long as the batteries are their own sustainable energy source, and it's like, okay, we got the power plant online, they're charging the batteries, they keep the batteries charged,
Yeah.
so that when, like Paul mentioned, okay, a power plant goes down, now I can supplement, or if it was the only power plant, now batteries are keeping me limping along to the vital loads. Then that's fine. I like that gameplay. I'm down with that. I'm familiar with that gameplay actually in real life.
Yeah.
But the idea would be get your power plant back online so that you can start using your hydrogen fuel, which is your primary long-term energy reserves. But maybe if you're running low, that's the engineering gameplay of, hey, we're running low on hydrogen fuel. It's a matter of we got to start shutting down some loads. So shields are going, weapons are going. You were going down to the minimum amount. I'm turning off these thrusters and I'm turning off life support systems, and I'm turning off these things to make that hydrogen fuel stretch to whatever I need it to be. Because the moment you run out of hydrogen fuel, it's not even just that I'm stranded in space. It's like all the systems go down. That was what the power plant was relying on too.
See, what I'm wondering is batteries and the power plant are going to be the most heavily used part of the core of your ship. They're going to be the most heavily torqued out outside of physical combat if you're not a combat player. So I would expect malfunctions,
Oh, of course.
malfunctions to occur between the linkage between your ignition source, whatever that is, to your power plant or fuel tank or something. You see what I'm saying? Because on a car, you have a battery, an engine, a ignition, and then
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just trying to say that they're probably your most likely repair areas. Well, sorry about the pop-ups. I don't know.
It's cool. As I say, someone's getting a Discord message.
You were just tricking me. I was
Yeah.
like, I thought it was mine. I'm like looking over my Discord, like, no, not me. All right.
I'm thinking those would probably. I'm probably thinking they would be the most heavily worn out of all the components because others kind of auxiliary, but that may be to your advantage too. If enemies go after your main power supply, maybe you have a secondary that gets you to limp, like you said, Cobb, out of the combat zone to get full repairs or at least get the heck out of there if the losing the fight's not in your favor.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to pause for a quick second. My fuzzy roommate over here has decided that now is the time that he needs to use the bathroom.
That's fine. Go for it. I'll kind of add in there. So I'll add in a little bit. I think a little differently. The way I look at this is I'm thinking of this in terms of what you were talking about with like maintenance. I think generally speaking, the way I'm seeing engineering is it's becoming more. It's a lot more of a gameplay loop. If that sounds, it's going to sound kind of weird, but
very necessary one too.
Yeah, like you're going to have to do it. It's not originally when they were pitching it, I thought it was going to be sort of something someone else could do sort of on a side, like, oh, a gunner can also be an engineer, as I said. But it feels much more like, yeah, I'm definitely going to have to do this. Like someone's going to have to check the capacitors. Someone has to check the battery banks. Someone's going to have to check the power plants, the shield generators, all of these different like systems to make sure they're working and see which one's at who's damaged, who isn't, and this is like before or during flight and doing things like having to say, listen, I've got to do fuel calculations. We use, 10% of our hydrogen fuel to keep our power plant up and running. And, if we don't have enough to do that, we can't run the engines, which means we can't travel and all these sorts of things. It feels like CIG is really dialing in the idea of engineering as a gameplay. Like someone can play as an engineer, and that is their whole role. So
I can definitely see it, not just for ships.
Yeah,
because we know that outposts will have a similar system. And not trying to jump ahead if that was going to be a larger topic, but we're going to have the same malfunctions from outside power supply on a base.
Oh, yeah.
You have like in American cities, we either have nuclear, solar, wind, whatever power plants.
Yeah.
They require consistent maintenance to continue to run, especially nuclear power plants, because gets too hot. What do you have? A meltdown, or worse. Ask
that cop. That's his job.
People.
Yeah.
A good incident, actually very little understood, is 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
And there are many other examples. But dialing it back in here, back to what I was saying about outposts, they all will have capacitors, fuse boxes, like in every house has a fuse box.
Mm-hmm.
So expect those, and you're going to have to get used to maintaining your outpost just like your ship or your vehicles.
Yeah, and like even your like sort of yeah, magic beam guns, those will all have power supplies that will drain in power, and you can power things by using them as a kind of as a jump starting source. They kind of showed that off in the last ISC, but it also seems like they're going to have a limited amount. So it feels like, it definitely feels like a kind of a, how to put it. It feels more like they're trying to make it interesting, but also trying to make it required to do.
I think every org that has a setup base will have a engineer corps to maintain their outpost or their settlement or whatever. They'll have handyman. They'll literally have ranks like handyman, journeyman, tradesman. I'm surprised nobody's thinking of it yet, because it's probably going to happen sooner and later.
Oh yeah, I mean it's and I'm also interested to seeing catastrophic failures. Like what happens?
Failures?
No, I mean like what happens if you don't maintain your power plant and it just explodes? Not fire, but just blows up.
Or at least becomes critically damaged.
Yeah.
And causes some damage to the ship. I think maybe, outright all dead is probably the wrong way to go. Don't get me wrong, I love that kind of consequence in the game, but at the very least, it's like, oh, you didn't do maintenance on it. Well, congratulations. Now it's dead, and in a catastrophic failure, it did significant damage to other related subsystems.
Yeah,
that would be cool. Like, hey, now not only that, but now two of your weapon systems are damaged, one of your shield gens is offline and it needs repair. That would be a cool little moment.
Yeah.
Moonless brings up Chernobyl. That is a very terrible nuclear disaster of poor engineering.
Yeah.
Well, there were other aspects to it.
Yeah, there were.
You brought up 3 Mile Island earlier, access, and I think that's a good example of something like because like for a lot of people don't know that 3 Mile Island was still working as a nuclear facility well after the accident. It was just one reactor.
It was only one. Yeah, it was one reactor on site. Sorry, these are case studies that you
have to study.
Like, as a nuclear engineering department, like Master Chief, like on a sub. This is like all of it.
Yeah.
Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, SL1, Fukushima is now in the curriculum too. But I'll be honest with you, that happened after I went through my initial training, so it's been a hot minute. So,
but
yeah, all good stuff.
But the idea being like if like that's a good example, because in like Star Citizen with engineering, you could have a situation where if you have 2 power plants, one goes down, you can still run with 1 power plant. It's just like just because these things are very dangerous and you need to make sure they're maintained, it doesn't mean that if you aren't good at what you do, you can keep things going despite all of the bad things happening, even on things like your planetary bases and stuff like that. So, and I think that's the direction CIG wants to go. And I think that's really what surprised me from the very beginning, is that the entirety of the, how to put it, the entirety of the engineering gameplay is its own loop. I never had thought that it was going to be its own like secluded loop. I always thought of it as being kind of like an addition, like a gunner or a medic. Like, you can be a medic, but when you're on the ship, you're also, gunning, or, you're going to load boxes and stuff like that. Something you can do kind of like as an every crewman, like you're just kind of just going around doing what you need to do. But yeah, the more they talk about it, the more it sounds like, no, this is your full-time job. If you're an engineer, your job on a ship, your job is to be an engineer, and you're going to always be busy because you're going to be replacing fuses, maintaining power and support. But I do definitely want to see where and more about the power management itself, because I'm a big Star Trek fan. So I'm all about rerouting power from the shields to the weapons.
Yeah.
The balance there, like you have one power source, but you can just shift it around here and there to get better improvements. That sort of gameplay has always seemed interesting to me because it's all about like matching the right balance rather than being like, okay, I'm gonna go, this is my setup and I'm done. So
Man.
Related to capacitors, we're forgetting something for larger things because remember, ships are kind of small. Bases would be much bigger.
Mhm.
We might have to put in substations like in real towns. Because when you have a blackout in a large metropolitan city, you have to reroute power. Otherwise, the wires and the infrastructure
can be damaged. Yeah.
can be damaged or electrocute people messing with it.
Mhm.
And
that was a
I
serious
assume,
concern during the winter freeze here in Texas. Was they were bringing power back up online to return power, but they knew that if they brought it back up too quickly, they didn't know which lines were damaged or which weren't. They could damage the infrastructure itself by bringing too much power into the system, or it was something to that degree because there was a concern about like basically ruining the infrastructure if they brought it back too fast, which was a
I almost want to
controversial
say
decision.
power lines would burn on those, or
Mhm.
some sort of transfer cables would, because they're made of conductibles. Get them too hot and they scorch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
So
the insulation will burn, and then when the insulation burns, it exposes the conductor, and the conductor's grounded potentially. And if the conductor's grounded, it just draws more current through the conductor, which burns more insulation further down the line, or causes whatever the upstream supply of it is to essentially overheat, short, draw too much current, and that's when you start like popping things like major fuses at substations and or destroying the equipment at a substation.
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying that this fire stuff is going to affect a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be minor localized things. Well, it can be localized at first, but trip the wrong fuse and you could have an entire blackout and fires everywhere.
Yeah.
I
Well,
am.
I mean, I imagine that's what the fuse system is for. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what it should be for. Is it should be this component drew too much current, or there's a fire in these subsystems or in the surrounding area. The fuses should be designed to pop first to protect the equipment on the other side of the fuses while that area burns, that area suffers the casualty, whatever, so that it preserves systems as a whole. Um, uh, Sorry, we call it selective tripping
Yeah.
in our vernacular on the sub, where it's like, okay, if you take battle damage and or you have a casualty like a fire in a space, the fuses closest to that space, closest to the loads, should have the lowest trip points.
Mhm.
The fuses closer to the source should have the higher trip points, so that a fuse closer to a load trips first, protects the source of power to that system, and ultimately just cuts that system off from the rest of the ship if you're going undergoing battle damage or
Hmm.
casualty or whatever.
So that'll lead to my
Starting to
next. This leads to my next question, though. So I'll start with you, Access, on this one, which is, would you like to? What have you not heard about engineering that you'd like to know more about in the coming kind of months as we lead to 4.0?
kind of what I just brought up. Will there be different levels of engineering for different size like installations? Because all we've seen is a few limited examples of engineering webs, like on the Hercules and I think the Aurora. Is that the other ship they used, or was it a different one?
The engineering loadout. It may have been Aurora. I think that was more. That was probably the like the M2 or something to that degree. I don't know. Or was it the Gladius that they showed? The chat saying the Gladius. So
The reason why I'm so curious is, you know, will there be different like levels of it? Like the more power you pump into it, obviously, like in real life, will we be required to have more stuff added to it? Because it's sounding like it's going that direction. I'd just like to hear from it.
okay. Nightcop, what would you like to hear in terms of about engineering in the future?
Ooh, I really want to understand maintenance. I
Okay.
really want to understand maintenance. So I had a thought, and I don't know because I don't want them to turn maintenance into a chore, but I want it to be something that's a boon. Like a
Mhm.
well-maintained system confers like a positive bonus. A well-maintained laser repeater, fires a fraction of a second faster or maintains charge better. Bottom line, or like I guess the way to say it would be, you get more, maybe like one or two extra shots per mag, off the capacitor bank or something
Mhm.
like that. A small but minor advantage that is tangible that you can see. And I love the idea. I feel like they've got a system already in place for it. I would just want them to copy it in some way. Uh, the mining gadgets
Yeah.
where you have to do the attunement process to
Mhm.
whatever the rock is, and it's just as simple as like, okay, you got to dial in frequency modulation, or whatever the other thing on it is, and that's something that you could just do from a MFD panel or an engineering panel in the ship on a regular basis, and it's a fun little mini game, and you get something tangible out of it. And I think that would just be super cool for like a maintenance thing. That's when you're in quantum, even in a single ship fighter, you could pull up, hey, let me pull up my two laser repeaters and do some quick little dialing in, trying to get to a 100% attunement, and call that maintenance. Call
Mhm.
it maintenance. And as the longer in between that you do that, the more it degrades. Maybe you lose a couple shots in the magazine. Maybe it generates heat a little faster. I don't know. You pick.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of something to kill time in quantum with that involves some light engineering gameplay maintenance.
What you're saying is you want CIG to make us all Garrus Vakarian, who's
I
always
don't know what the what I
Ma-
didn't catch that reference. I'm sorry.
Mass Effect. In I think it's in Mass Effect 2. He's always like maintaining his weapons. He's always like tuning his weapons. So whenever you see
Oh
him,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
always
yeah.
he's always got his gun. And he's like I'm doing maintenance, and it's always like that. It's always like the like sort of like modulating and that kind of stuff. Calibrations. Thank you, Ghost. Yeah,
Calibrations.
he's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about calibrations. Yeah, we got to calibrate our weapons so that they're more efficient, or calibrate our I think make the wave functions match. Yeah, because
Yeah.
a lot of people are in chatter being like, this is all like I don't we don't we don't want people to have a like electrical engineering degrees to be able to play the game.
No,
It's
no,
like,
no. If you guys, yeah, no.
yeah,
If you guys have ever played with the mining gadgets, that's all I'm talking about.
yeah,
That's all I'm talking about.
yeah. But I mean, talking about like the fuses and stuff like that, or how it works. It's like, yeah,
Oh,
but the thing about that is that you could simplify that. Like the idea being that the fuses themselves can pop in different manners depending on how the load is, and that the understanding that the load causing rerouting the load can cause damage to the system
yes.
is what's an important part. It's
Yeah.
simplifying the fact of like, this area is down, we need to reroute the power, but this is going to damage the system, but we need to be able to reroute the power this direction so we can function. Then we have to go maintain that damage. It's more of a, like I said, it's like, it seems like CIG is making this more of a loop, and so you need to manage those sorts of things or understand these basic, like, yes, we're taking this, we need to start triaging and figure out where we need to go, what we need to do, what's the most important, what's not, that sort of idea. Um,
Hmm.
so
I know I missed some of the conversation, but I really want that. I
yeah,
don't want to play that, just to be clear.
yeah,
Like, I get enough of that at work. I don't want that in my space game for me, but I want it in the space game for other people that don't do what I do on a regular basis, because
yeah,
I want to fly the ships and shoot the pew pews.
yeah,
All right. Like, I don't get to do that in real life, and I would like to do that for fun in my fake space life with fake space money.
yeah,
But like, I think it would be really cool to have the engineer be such a level of responsibility that they're worth their weight in gold.
yeah,
A good engineer on your ship is like one of those people who like, hey man, I'm gonna be on later to play Star Citizen, and we're taking out the hammerhead, and you're the engineer guy,
yeah,
or girl, and we need you, because if we don't take you with us, then we're screwed. And what a great game loop that would be for somebody, that likes to do the the support gameplay. I think that'd be cool. We don't necessarily need you, but it would be like if you're taking it into combat, you're like,
I need this person.
we could go without you, but it'd be really cool if you could find a way to make your schedule free tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Especially since CIG has been really leaning into the MMO sort of aspect of Star Citizen. That's very kind of, this is the role that you will play in the game that's important, and without that role, you're going to be at a disadvantage. It's not like yeah, you could run a dungeon without a healer or a tank, but you risk cascade failures happening where people can't heal you can't self-heal fast enough, and you get into some bad problems, stuff like that. So
I really worked hard to avoid the term heel slut in that whole discussion, but then you brought up the WoW, and I was like, now I feel like we're close enough in that I can just say it. Yeah,
you're the engineer slut. Yeah,
y'all knew what we were talking about. Ooh, now new label, guys. New label, engineer slut.
Yeah. I'm not getting monetized in this video. All right.
Paul, you brought me on. I don't know. Fast Cart's not here, so it's all on me. It's all on me today.
I married a Navy brat, so I'm used to these sorts of things. So
6 to 9, guys. 6 to 9. Fast Cart, if you're listening, I hope you're doing well. Look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, Fast Cart's in the chat. So.
Oh, hey, he's in chat. Yeah, 6 to 9. Fast Cart, I'm still looking to live in that world. I think we all are.
So, in general, I think we have a good conversation here. Overall, I will kind of the last thoughts that I will have on it. Is there anything else that kind of just caught your eye, or something, like I said at the beginning, that you want to know more about when it comes to both engineering and fire, or maybe even how those two interconnect? Starting with you, Netcob.
2 seconds. Yeah, hit Axis first. I need a second or two to think about that.
Sorry.
Because we've talked about a lot of things, but is there anything that you want to know more about? Either from engineering, fire, or the combination of those two.
Well, for fire, I'm curious how it will affect other things in the environment besides just burnables, like water or lava or environmental stuff.
We mentioned that at the very beginning, like the idea of having fire as a component for like a kiln or like a forge or like a kiln, or like some sort of tool, like using fire as a tool
to make and make stuff with, like commodities and things. Crafting, part of the crafting trade. I mean, if they can figure it out on Daymar, surely we players can. A fired kiln, you'd have to feed it, obviously, something burnable to get it to go. And we saw one in the latest Inside Star Citizen. Something that looked suspiciously like a kiln.
Yeah, or a like an oven or something like that. Yeah.
Either it was suggesting a food path or a artisan path for the player. So that's really weird. On the engineering side, I don't know if you know what a converter is, but some things may not be able to take your native power supply. Some things
I don't think they'll ever get into that, though.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to get that far.
Inverters.
Yeah,
we're running into that electrical engineering stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, people have enough understanding of that.
Unify it, but we'll have to see, I guess. I don't think they're going to go that detailed, though.
I could see them doing something to simplification. Like, if you want to take your power plant that's running your ship or your like homestead, and you want to charge your ship while you're doing maintenance, you might need like a component that's like called an inverter or a converter that you just you have to like stick between the two power lines to make it work properly, because this works off of this power supply and your ship works off of different types of power supply, and you have to change the voltage or whatever. It doesn't really have, you don't have to like, oh, I need the right the right version of a converter or an inverter. It's just more like it's a converter. Here you go. Here's a box.
Yeah,
Take the box and plug the plug box.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Something simple that I think could be reasonable to expect, but I don't know if they'll ever go there, would be, hey, certain power supplies. If you've got a 2 power supply ship, like you can't load a competition in with a military.
Yeah.
2 different systems, they don't share well. Bottom line is it's like military one, if you're going military, you got to go military. And if you're going competition, you got to go competition. And if you're, civilian economy, whatever it is, bottom line is the two are not necessarily compatible in that regard. Um, Either that or you lose efficiency. That'd be cool. Like if you lose efficiency because the systems don't match and they don't, like if military, coolers work better with military power supplies and all that kind of stuff. And if you decide to divert from that, you may lose some efficiency. Maybe you gain something else in return, but that'd be just, I mean, that's like the cool stuff that
Yeah.
I would hope maybe would kind of delve into it. But
That feels like more like once you have the baseline of the profession in game, you start building up to those sorts of things where it's not like everyday sort of thing. How about you, Neka? Any other questions you'd have or things you'd be interested in terms of engineering or fire or both?
Well, I had a couple.
Okay.
I had time to think of it because Fuzzy Roommate is being needy today.
But he's a good boy.
I'm supposed to be doing stuff. He is a good boy. Ghost Dog is a very good boy. One, they talked about it a long time ago, and I really want to know. They seem to be alluding to it, but I really want to talk about subcomponents again to components.
Yeah.
And what that does to systems. And I really want to understand better the variety of components. I know I kind of mentioned it with like military versus civilian. I'm just really hoping that it's not just a classification system of A, B, C, D, E.
Mhm.
I want there to be advantages and drawbacks to literally every brand of power supply, shield generator, um, cooler, whatever, so that this is, and then if you have subcomponents, how much more variety does that add in terms of a layer? And does it require more engineering? Like, I just love the idea of, for an example, I really want them to go into the discussion of, okay, you have a military drive. What's the consequence of having, a military shield generator, or a power supply? My hope legitimately would be high performance, high maintenance.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you want to run military shit? Good. Go get a good engineer and get
Yeah.
somebody that's dedicated to the task. Because otherwise, like stand by. It's gonna fail on you if you don't treat it right. If you don't do regular maintenance on it, it's gonna quickly lose its advantages, things like that. It's the worst possible gear you could possibly have from a maintenance standpoint. But man, does it perform when you need to. Or it handles battle damage better than most
Yeah.
components. Something. You want something you don't have to do maintenance on, but it's going to last you, a long time. Pick a civilian, drive or
Yeah.
power supply or whatever. And then, maybe you can tweak it a little bit in one direction or the other if it's, with subcomponents. But I would really love it if they talk about those again. And whether or not, I just want to know, hey, are we committed to that idea still? We're still going in that direction? Or this is something we took off the table a long time ago and we don't want to talk about it ever again? One of the two.
They mentioned subcomponents in the last ISC. It was just a brief mention of it, so it was like that seems like a really odd thing to mention without going into more detail about it.
I agree.
So, yeah,
you know how it goes though, Paul. Man, it's like sometimes it's like, hey, we haven't talked about that thing in a long time, and it's for a reason.
Yeah,
it's because that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, true.
Quantum economy. Let's just not talk about it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah.
Tony Z? Tony Z who? I don't know that guy.
There was a great term I heard, which is, because like the joke that I've heard from many a military personnel and vet is whenever someone says, "Oh, it's military grade," they immediately said, "Get it away from me! It's going to explode and kill us all. It's built out of balsa wood and hopes and dreams. Do not come near it." But the way I think of military grade in terms of Star Citizen,
Did I lose you guys?
Nope, we're still here. Can you hear us?
No, it's just Fastcart trying to demonetize the stream through chat.
What on earth just happened?
You might want to
6 to 9 minutes,
reconnect.
by the way, Fast Cart. 6 to 9 minutes. That's how long I want.
Can you
it
hear
to
us?
last.
Hear us there, Axis? Axis? Hold on.
No, we might have lost him.
He's still on on there. I can still hear him. So
Okay, that was weird. Yeah, I can hear you.
okay, good.
Gotcha.
Or I think I can hear you. Hold on. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We could hear you before.
Oh, that was weird.
That's weird. But the way I've heard this, was watching a video on this, a video on something else recently that was just talking about, military warships, and it described military warships as like 2-year-old children. They're stupid, and they will, if you don't take care of them all the time, they will walk off and try to get themselves killed or do some very dangerous things and light stuff on fire for no reasons. That you have to constantly pay attention to them to make sure that they're doing exactly what you need them to do, because they like to break. And if you're not doing the proper maintenance for them, it's going to happen. And I remember talking with Atira Kell about, it being with like Abrams, and talking about how like the operational time is only a couple of hours or something like that, where you're just not really usable. And that's the way I was always thought about Star Citizen. The best way of going from military grade. It's like, yeah, you want the best of all worlds, get military grade, but be ready for that thing to break in 2 minutes. It could be the best performing thing you've ever seen for about one engagement, and then you're going to need to return and get that repaired, and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to repair it, because that's what it's good at. Good in brief bursts. The only question I still have is kind of twofold. Number one, how will this base side, the stuff like kind of like on the planet side, that sort of engineering, interact with engineering in ships? Because are we going to see the exact same modules? Are we going to see different modules? Is it a situation where I can go into an abandoned outpost and pull out like a cooler that might be able to fit on my ship, and then like slop it onto my ship if I need to for like replacement parts? Or they're going to go for more like very like, oh yeah, this is like a base power plant, and that's it. It can't, even though it's a size 2 plant, it can't fit in the size 2 ship. And then
Swappability, interchangeability. That's a good question.
How interchangeable are we going to see these things? And the other one is fire beyond ships. I know they didn't want to talk a little bit about fire beyond ships, but like how willing is CIG to go full Far Cry 2?
I don't think they are. They have their environments are too bespoke.
Yeah,
and the ones that matter.
Because like that's where things are going to get really crazy if CIG wants to go that details.
I'm with you, because I want to know too, because it's one of those things. Like, I saw the Maelstrom demonstration at CitizenCon last year, and I was just like, you don't want to do that. That's like only applicable to ships, right? Like, you've spent too much time on every single little POI, every space station. Like, you've admitted that it's not full procedural. Like, I don't understand how you would even be okay with Maelstrom and technology related to Maelstrom, like fire, outside of things that the players own and the players repair.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't get it.
Well,
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because I want to know too.
Yeah.
If they are cool with that.
How far are they going to go? Not just with fire, but with engineering and maintenance and stuff like that. Are we going to have a situation where, like, if there is fire in outside the building you're in, that you're going to start to take damage because the oxygen is being sucked out of the room you're in? Like, are we dealing with, different, because they want to do different atmospheres. Are we going to start dealing with like atmospheric composition, determining if fires can happen, or even how well certain materials
like
will function?
High oxygen environments.
Yeah. Or like, corrosive environments. Is that going to have an effect on how your ships are running? Like, will your atmospheric processors begin to, on your ships, that, that creates, livable atmosphere, that they can start breaking down, and you're gonna have to replace them? Like, Like that's sort of, once you start getting beyond the closed loop of spaceship outpost, when you start dealing with them, but also with the environments around them, like how detailed is CIG going? Like, are we going full send, or are they going to find a part where they're like, yeah, it's going to require a solution to the speed of light that we're not going to be able to figure out until now.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, man. I see that Thorsten guy on the engineering, discussions, and he seems pretty intelligent. So he seems committed to it too. So
oh no,
we'll see.
I believe CIG is crazy enough to try. I'm just wondering, like, is there somebody in the room who's going to raise their hand and be like, how much is this going to cost us, to run? What's the?
Yeah, it's a lot of CPU drain. The more you throw on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also in terms of like, you got to think about lighting and like smoke. That's one of the things a lot of people were kind of pointing out, was that it seemed really like there's a lot of fire. There wasn't a lot of smoke for fire.
Yeah.
And anybody who's been around a fire in a closed space, I have fortunately or unfortunately, it's happened to me once. And luckily no one was hurt, but you're not prepared for how quickly smoke it takes over an entire place when a fire is going, because it can be
less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, it is, and you can't see anything within a couple of within a minute. It becomes just, you don't see anything. It's not fire everywhere. It's just blackness and you can't breathe. It's not fun.
Can't confirm.
So like Gin is saying, Gin and Tonic saying that, like, they said that the smoke is there now, and I assume that they were toning down the smoke so you could see the fire because it was like pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, it does look pretty. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I was just like, but how much is that? Because once you get to that point, like, okay, there is smoke. When you have a wildfire, that's a lot of smoke. That's going to start affecting the light that's cascading through the smoke, which is why anybody who's been around when California lights on fire every year, you'll see the sun itself changes color because the amount of smoke that's in the air, and those sorts of things. You start to deal with, like, the planetary tech people have to start dealing with it. So like how far are they willing to push this? So
Honestly, they could go pretty far, Paul, because if you go with your example that you just said, fire can influence the very weather around it. It can create fire whirls, fire tornadoes. It can even create a type of thunderstorm called a pyrocumulonimbus, or it's literally a thunderstorm that sucks in all the moisture from the trees and stuff in the area. It gets so hot it creates its own weather in a region. Now, and it takes very specific conditions to do that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
CIG wants to do weather systems. Are they willing to go that insane? I don't think they are, but I do want to know which direction they're moving in, because I know CIG likes to do this. We're going to go sim and then pull it back to realism, or we're going to go realism or sim, and we're going to pull it back to fun. I should just say, pull it back to fun.
Yeah.
So
CIG, if you're listening, we're okay if you keep it on the ships.
Yes, it's okay if you
want to devote some development time to something else. Keep it on the ships for now. We're all right with that. All right?
I'd be okay if the most they do is you can throw a couple of incendiary grenades into a house and light it on fire, in terms of, like, a base. It's fine. Like player bases and ships, the same thing.
Yeah. You know what? Hey, player bases and ships, because they didn't make those.
No.
I could see them being okay with that. You know, you want to make it just player bases and ships? Down, guys. You do never have to do it on, a landing zone, settlement. I don't even know what that would cost you. Permanent hangars cost you a lot. So let's not worry about, like, setting fire to the landing zones you've handcrafted. All right, we don't need to do that.
That's a whole
none of us need it.
Realm caster, that's a whole other can of worms. Lightning strikes.
Yeah. Oh, not even
conversation.
That's
oh, man, where is lightning strikes, by the way? God, they showed that off, and I want it so bad.
I mean, I want leather, but I'm of the opinion, like, I can't wait to play.
I'm sorry, did you say you want leather?
I mean, yes.
Whoa.
I can't wait to put on some, moody noir jazz and fly through Area 18 while during a rainstorm. All right, like that's That's just
weather.
Yes, weather.
Weather. I get it. I thought he was talking about weather, guys. Sorry. And then he started bringing up the noir space jazz, and I was like, I don't know where Paul's going anymore. We're just riding this train. We're see where it ends up.
I thought you were just messing.
We're all
with
in
me.
it together, guys. I thought he said leather.
Yeah. Or things like from the infamous 2016 Sandworm gameplay, like sandstorms or fog. Like we do have a little bit of fog, but like actual fog. But
volumetric, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's kind of our end of our discussion. We're going to move into the question and answer section of things. But because I've been kind of breaking these up a little bit, I break up this. So this is a recorded segment that I post up on YouTube after the fact. And if you've been enjoying this so far, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and hit the bell icon to be notified when these release. If you're watching this on YouTube live, hit the do all that sort of thing. If you're watching this on Twitch live, hit that follow button. And if you want to watch the question and answer session after the fact, I will leave a link right above Axis's head. And you click that link, and it will take you to the video, or in the kind of chapters. I'll have it broken out so you can just go straight to the Q&A session and listen to the rest of the video if you'd like to. But for now, we're going to take a few minutes break. We'll be right back. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.